Hello and welcome to the weekly newscast by First Ukraine. My name is Olga Tkachenko and we are ready to present you latest news for outgoing week. The legislative proposal on visa-free regime for Ukraine was introduced to the EU Council and the European Parliament, and in the coming weeks for Ukraine and Georgia from the European Council and the European Parliament could be received a positive decision on visa-free regime. That was said by the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker when speaking to the deputies of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. According to European politicians, Ukraine and Georgia meet the necessary criteria and fulfill all obligations. Previously, a number of media reported that the proposal to abolish visas for Ukraine and the EU Council was introduced in late April. The Parliament of the Netherlands voted not to cancel Ukraine's association agreement with the EU. The initiator of the vote was the Socialist Party. For withdrawal of law and ratification voted 71 deputies, but 75 members of Parliament voted against. Recalling on April 6 at the referendum, the majority of Dutch citizens who came to the polls did not support an association agreement with Ukraine. To discuss current political issues, we invited political expert Andrei Valchishin. According to this information... To discuss current political issues, we invited political expert Andrei Valchishin. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
So I would like to ask you at first, according to this information that we heard, should we expect the positive voting of European Parliament in the near future for Ukraine? Or does there are any obstacles for Ukraine on this way to visa liberalization with the European Union?
You know, Ukrainian society have worked to this abolishment of visas for so many years that, of course, there are a lot of doubts whether everything will be okay. But what we see from analytics and from analysis of European Parliament and the balance of powers over there will be no obstacles for Ukraine, hopefully. And even the procedure that was adopted and offered by European Commission later after the debates in European Parliament, European Council will need to adopt a final decision. And basically, even if there will be 1 or 2 or 3 countries that will be against this decision, it will not influence it.
And according to the Dutch referendum, as we saw, it was the negative result for Ukraine. But later then, we have seen different positive outcome from the parliament. So how could you comment on this in this regard? What made Dutch politicians to ignore the vote of their citizens?
You know, it is not only a Ukrainian problem, the results of referendum in Netherlands. Indeed, the whole system and the whole concept of United Europe is questioned right now because a small part of people in one of the countries, they can basically block strategic decisions between European Union and other countries. So I'm not sure if they have found the decision how to exit the situation at this time. But from what we see right now, those negotiations are taking place, and they are looking how to deal with it.
Okay, we continue on with commenting on other events. So, for the first time in Ukrainian history, Prime Minister of Denmark visited Ukraine. On Tuesday, April 19, he had meetings with Prime Minister of Ukraine, Volodymyr Groysman, and President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko. Besides outrageous Russian aggression, Mr. Rasmussen underlined that authorities of Denmark will never recognize annexation of Crimea. Also, Danish Prime Minister expressed interest to the investment environment in Ukraine and hoped that under the ruling of a new government, a friendship between Ukraine and Denmark will be enhanced.
As the President just mentioned, I have brought with me representatives from Danish companies. More than 30 Danish companies have joined me on this visit. And I think it proves the remarkable potential and interest for further investment and more trade between our two countries. And this interest among Danish companies have certainly increased since the free trade agreement between EU and Ukraine entered into force the 1st of January this year. That's also why we have newly announced a new Danish investment facility specifically for Ukraine in order to encourage Danish companies to explore the huge potential in Ukraine.
So in this regard, could we expect further financial assistance from the European partners? Are they satisfied with the changes in our Ukrainian government?
From what we have seen from public statements, not only from Denmark but also from other countries, new Ukrainian government has support of international community, and it is of course very important for Volodymyr Groysman. But the exact size of this support and when it will come and in what ways it will come will depend on the actions that will be taken by Ukrainian government. And we know that it is in rather complicated situation because we do not have a stable majority in parliament to support governmental decisions. And more than that, those groups that are being taken as allies in parliament, they are basically controlled by oligarchs. And this can stop reforms or significantly influence them in a negative way.
Let's continue with discussing issues on Ukrainian government. The personnel appointments took place at the first meeting of the new government. The cabinet unanimously approved the candidacy of leader Укрзалізниця. He is the former head of the Polish Railways, Wojciech Balczun, and the new general director of Укрпошта became Igor Smilянський. Previously, he worked in the auditing company. More details on first meeting of the new cabinet, watch in the following story.
New ministers had come to the government meeting 2 hours before it has started. The sitting has started with opening speech of Prime Minister Volodymyr Groysman. He named the priorities of new government and articulated the first goal for cabinet of ministers.
Дуже багато розмов навколо того, що ліки у нас надзвичайно дорогі.
There are a lot of talks around high prices on medicines, but after the analysis of this situation, it was defined that national law and institutions do everything in order to close this market and not to allow to create the competition in quality of prices.
Не дати на ньому створити конкуренцію по якості і по цінам.
Besides medicines, there is a fight with corruption and orienting points of further economic growth in the agenda. Ministers had approved the candidacy of new head of Укрзалізниці. He is Polish reformator and well-known in Poland rocker Wojciech Balczun. Mr. Groysman underlined that he is one of the best anti-corruption managers in Poland. Mr. Balczun made a speech in his native language, but he promises to study Ukrainian.
Spółka jako jedyna kolej towarowa w Europie zadebiutowała na giełdzie.
Przepraszam bardzo, a всі розуміють?
Pardon me, does everyone understand?
Може бути ще англійською.
Can it be in English?
Speak English or I can speak Polish.
Ukrainian Igor Smilянський had become a new general director of Укрпошта. He obtained higher education in US and works in New York. He has already promised to develop finance services and to create the Post Bank. His candidacy had been also agreed unanimously. I would like to create the company which could be visited by people with pleasure, and they could leave it with pleasure. These finance indexes will satisfy government, and it will be financial organization which will be rising further. Minister of Infrastructure Volodymyr Milyan is satisfied with new appointments. Finally, two biggest state companies had got two really the best leaders as a result of transparent contest. I guess that it is clear signals also for the rest of the world that Ukraine continues reforms. And I thank you for your political will. During the first sitting of Cabinet of Ministers, it had been decided to create the Ministry on issues of temporary occupied territories and internally displaced people. Now it is headed by Vadim Chernysh. According to new minister, the institution will be created in a way of reorganization of renewing of Donbass agency.
So concerning the new appointments in the government, I would like you to express your view on the general prospects of the new government, the strategy of its work, and how the political agenda will be looking like.
So we have seen two important appointments this week, and they do have a significant influence on inner Ukrainian situation and also on international relations. Why? First of all, the new appointment to the head of Postal Service of Ukraine. You know that a former director, he was perceived by media, by journalists, as a person very close to Volodymyr Groysman, and there were also speculations about some corruptional ties between them. So basically, right now, Groysman doesn't have any big wounds or red flags that he can be attacked on in this regard. And secondly, regarding the Balczun, I think that it can strengthen not only the railway industry in Ukraine, but also our relations with Poland. As you know, after the revolution, many foreign experts were invited here to work in Ukraine. from Georgia, from Lithuania, but none of them were invited from Poland at the time when Poland was one of the brightest lobbyists of Ukrainian interests during the revolution, before it, and after it. So I think it is also the positive signal to Polish society, to Polish political elite, and we know that there were some changes in the ruling party in Poland, and it can be additional opportunity to build a bridge between our countries.
But this strategy, doesn't it seem similar as the previous government has, to invite the foreigners and especially people from business structures? And but what's new the new government will present?
Indeed, we see that none of the ministers are foreign citizens in the new government, and those appointments that were done, they deal only basically with business. So it is big state-owned business such as railways, industry, or postal service. What we'll see, what changes will be done by new government, it is too early to tell at this point, because the program that was adopted in Parliament, it is more of a political program, and it is not a strict action plan. And only during this week, Groisman gave tasks to his ministers within 30 days to prepare very precise plans of what should be done inside their ministers, and at this time it is way too early to tell what will be the perspective for this government. At the same time, what is interesting about this government is that there were no big expectations regarding it. So when everyone expected Yatsenyuk back to 2 years ago, or before the parliamentary elections of 2014, everyone expected that he will come and he will create a miracle. Yes, and even his political party was going on this line, support our party and get Yatsenyuk to become a prime minister. So now, in general public and in civil society, there are no very high expectations, and anything that will be done in the correct way will be perceived very well.
And what about the future of the coalition? Should we expect the new elections to come?
My personal opinion is that yes. Of course, situation stabilized a little bit, but even during this week, we've seen that there is no stable majority, and those discussions regarding Prosecutor General and some other very important decisions that should be taken and passed through Parliament, they show that for each and every case, for each and every law, those small groups that have formed a coalition together with Blok Petro Poroshenko and Narodny Front, and those are basically two groups. One group Vidrodzenia that is being associated with Ukrainian oligarch Igor Kolomoisky, and second one, Voля Narodu, that is associated with a business group of Igor Yeremeyev, who is not alive anymore. But anyway, those groups, they will try to push their interests, and we'll see very long-lasting effects of such sorts of cooperation, and they can increase the political instability. For example, to my mind, the election law will not be changed. So even though there were many complaints on the majority system, part of the voting system in Ukraine, indeed it will not be changed, because those groups, they are basically represented by members of parliament that were elected through this system, and it is not good for them to change anything, because they control those small election districts and they are satisfied with their result. Secondly, we should take a close watch to what will be new appointments in the governmental structure and on the positions of the directors of the most important factories and other industries, because those groups, I think that they will try to lobby their interests and their people to have access to budget and to continue doing business as usual. So basically, this formation of new government and this coalition, situation was stabilized, but even from insiders from Bloc Petro Poroshenko on Narodny Front, they expect early elections during the spring of next year.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our guest was political expert Andrei Valchishin, and we are continuing our weekly newscast. And as for the past week, the situation around the Majlis of Crimean Tatar people became more complicated. Russia suspended the Crimean Tatars representative body on its territory, allegedly due to the extremist activities. Ukraine's foreign ministry called Poklonskaya order a violation of fundamental rights and freedoms in the peninsula, while international rights watchdog Amnesty International said the decision signals a new wave of repression against Crimean Tatars.
Russian Ministry of Justice included Majlis of Crimean Tatars to the list of organizations those activities are suspended because they are recognized as extremist. It is known that the association included to the list upon a decision of the so-called prosecutor of Crimea on the suspicion of a public association. In the order to ensure stability and consent in the Republic, to prevent speculation around international relations and calls for the population to legal actions, I have made a decision to suspend the activities of a public association Majlis of Crimean Tatars before the consideration of the decision by justice. We remind that Russia has banned entry for the current and former leaders of the Majlis, Rifat Chubarov and Mustafa Djemilev, to the Crimea from the beginning of occupation. They live in Kyiv, but so-called prosecutor's office of Crimea considers that they involved in energy blockade of peninsula. Putin's regime, with occupation of Crimea, made one more step towards the reducing of mental distance between it and Hitler's regime. Today, Crimean Tatars, Ukrainians, Ukraine are under attack, but no one can avoid answering the question, who will be condemned by Russia tomorrow? So Western leaders, international community must understand, if we don't stop Putin, tomorrow it will be their country and their people. In turn, Ukrainian General Prosecutor's Office of Crimea launched criminal proceedings of the fact of a legal prohibition of Majlis of Crimean Tatars in the Crimea, as press office reported. Meanwhile, Russian security chiefs conducted searches in the homes of journalists trying to find connection with Ukrainian media resource Krym-Reali. Office of this media is situated in Kyiv. Some journalists in Crimea are working for this media. The detained journalist Mykola Semena was released after questioning subject to travel restrictions. He said that Russians suspect him of calling for the violation of the territorial integrity of the Russian Federation. That investigators has seen in journalist article, which he wrote for Krym-Reali. In his turn, Mykola Semena rejected all the charges.
Nadia Savchenko, who was illegally detained in Russia, stopped a dry hunger strike. About that told Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko after the phone conversation with Nadia. Earlier, her sister Vera told that Nadia Savchenko agreed on daily medicine droppers in order her health condition would not become worse. How soon Savchenko can return to Ukraine? Watch in the following story.
After the announcement of sentence for Russian intelligence officers Yerofeev and Alexandrov, the possibility of exchange them on Nadia Savchenko is discussed in Ukraine. On 19th of April, Petro Poroshenko spoke with her by phone, and together with mom of Nadia, he asked to stop hunger strike. My sunshine, oh God, I'm very happy to hear your voice, but please stop the hunger strike. Nadia, all people ask you about that, all Ukraine. The day before, Poroshenko had a talk with Putin by phone. They discussed some algorithm to release of Ukrainian pilot.
Мною дані відповідні доручення Міністерству юстиції для того, щоб відпрацювати.
I gave the order to Justice Ministry in order to develop other mechanisms. The appropriate orders were given to Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I hope that this difficult work will be finished by Nadia's coming back home to Ukraine. At least I underline that I am ready to send presidential airplane with my representatives in order to take Nadia back home. Minister of Justice in the nearest future is ready to hand documents for exchange. According to Minister, in this case, this is not about extradition.
Ми подамо відповідні документи. Буквально, я думаю, протягом
We will hand the appropriate documents during the nearest 2 days. Now we have made the decision to give opportunity for diplomats to work with this side in order to get the algorithm and guarantees of terms concerning Nadia's returning to Ukraine.
і гарантії дотримання сроків повернення Надії на територію України.
Sister of Ukrainian pilot Vera Savchenko says that she is afraid of loud statements concerning release of Nadia, and she would rather not define the concrete date of his returning to Ukraine. She says that it would make Putin angry and drag out proceedings.
Зараз я б дуже хотіла, щоб ніхто нічого не казав, що
Now I would like that nobody say something like, "Oh, this day she will be released." It is Putin, and at least till the end of May there will not be anything. I want to believe that it will be earlier, but if there is a scenario of exchange, the sentence will be executed on 18th of May. Vera adds, today we should be happy that there is an opportunity to return Nadia Savchenko, and this opportunity should be used.
The President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Pedro Agramunt, called the Russian authorities to release immediately Nadia Savchenko. According to him, the release of Ukrainian pilot, the member of Verkhovna Rada and member of the Assembly, is especially important in light of her continuing hunger strike. The 4-day passé spring session started on April 18th, during which the situation in eastern Ukraine Russia significantly increases its impact on the occupied Donbass. That was stated at the PASE hearings by the Speaker on the Ukrainian question, Kristina Zelenkova and Marie-Louise Beck. According to their information, for the control of militants in eastern Ukraine, the Kremlin created the 5 so-called ministries. The commissioners called the situation in the occupied territories as hybrid annexation, which means a cession of Donetsk and Luhansk regions in Russia. And under such conditions, to carry out the elections in Donbass in the nearest future is impossible, the speakers presumed. Meanwhile, Holosyevsky District Court of Kiev announced the verdict for Russian Special Forces soldiers Alexander Alexandrov and Yevgeny Yerofeyev. They were sentenced for 14 years of imprisonment under the custody. Alexandrov and Yerofeyev were detained by anti-terrorist operation forces on 16th of May 2015.
I am the citizen of Russia, Yerofeyev Eugene. I live in the city of Tolyatti. I am a military officer of Russian Federation. I am captain, my post is commander of the group. I serve in the 3rd separate teams. The place of dislocation is city of Tolyatti. On these shots, last year, a Russian captain willingly talked about the Russian intervention units. This is a sergeant of Russian army, Alexandrov. 2 days earlier, his group attacked Ukrainian checkpoint and killed 1 soldier. After my injury, when Ukrainian soldiers detained me, they didn't hit me. They carried me on their hands and picked me up to the hospital. Now I have another perception. The fight was on 6th of May 2015 at their forefront position near the city Shastya. Russian group shell fired Ukrainian checkpoint. During counterattack, 2 Russian special forces soldiers were wounded and captured. They were shouting, "Don't kill me, I'm Russian." Then we delivered the first medical aid and picked them up to the hospital. We took care about them because we wanted to change them for our soldiers who were in captivity of terrorists. But Moscow wasn't hurrying to recognize the captives as Russian military. The Kremlin said that those servicemen retired from the army before the trip to Ukraine. Finally, the Ukrainian journalist on the press conference drew the attention of Russian president to the destiny of Russian prisoners. In the context of your statements that in Ukraine there is no Russian military staff, I want to say hello from Captain Yerofeyev and Sergeant Alexandrov.
Мы никогда не говорили, что там...
We never said that there is no one who works in the military sector and solve certain problems. But there are no any Russian regular forces. Feel the difference. You named 2-3 persons. In the same manner, Putin for a while denied the participation of Russian forces into occupation of Crimea. This is a video of other detained Russian military in Ukraine in August 2014. Name a number of military unit. 54096, 6th Separate Tank Brigade. Mines. Keep calm and go on. Military unit 73612, City of Tolyatti, 1st Separate Air Assault Brigade. Mothers and fathers, your children are alive. If we can, we will take them out of here. We don't need blood. But you in Russia, do your best, so the other children won't come on our land. Then Putin commented the Russian presence. They were just patrolling the border and got lost. Finally, Russian military were exchanged for Ukrainian soldiers. These negotiations were not easy, but thanks God the common sense has triumphed. Our guys now are with us, on our territory. I want to underline that we don't leave our guys. In this hybrid war waged by Russia, not all its soldiers came home alive.
Russia today,
What about the members of Russian main intelligence? They are negotiations of the exchange for Ukrainian citizens who are illegally detained in Russia.
The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine made in obtaining social protection for reservists injured during anti-terrorist operation in Donbass and their family members with military-related posts. Bill number 3497 on amendments to some laws of Ukraine concerning social protection of reservists who have suffered as a result of participation in anti-terrorist operation and members of their families in general was supported by 231 deputies in the first reading.
The bill is designed to establish an adequate level of pension for reservists who took part in anti-terrorist operation, persons from their number who have become disabled due to duty service in the military reserve, military forces at the time to direct participation in anti-terrorist operation or enduring its implementation, as well as family members of these persons who died because of these reasons, stated in the explanatory note to the document, says Valery Sushkevich.
To the dead, we have a commitment as people and as a country. They died for the country. The country must take care of their families, regardless of how difficult that might be. Last Tuesday proposed from the government a number of important decisions. Each family of deceased warrior will be provided. This applies to all the dead warriors from the Ukrainian army and National Guardsmen. Warriors who have suffered in the defense of integrity of Ukraine, they do not belong to the military. The concept of reservists doesn't give them any rights. Reservists must sit at the base, and these guys are up in arms to defend their power gun.
Thus, the law amends the law of Ukraine on pensions provision for persons dismissed from military service and certain other persons, and on status of veterans of military service, veterans of internal affairs, bodies and some other persons, and their social protection, which provides that the pension provision of reservists affected by the duty service in the military reserve military units, with their direct participation in the ATO and family members of reservists who died for the same reason, according to the procedure and the terms established by the legislation for military-related posts, says Sergei Pashinsky.
The bill is designed to establish an adequate level of pensions for reservists who took part in anti-terrorist operation, persons from their number who have become disabled due to duty service in the military reserve military forces at the time of direct participation in anti-terrorist operations or ensuring its implementation, as well as family members of this person who die because of these reasons.
According to the law, disabled persons of first and second group with disability come owing to wound, contusion, militation of disease connected with performance of duties on service in the military reserve, military forces at the time of direct participation in the ATO, ensuring its implementation, recognized veterans of military service.
Exactly, Russia destabilizes eastern Ukraine and supports separatists in Donbass. The Kremlin, in particular, provides ammunition, money, equipment, a command and control functions. It was said by NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg after the meeting of NATO-Russia Council. The meeting took place on Wednesday, on 20th of April. Stoltenberg said that Russia is trying to falsely portray the conflict in Donbass as a civil war, while it doesn't correspond to facts. The Secretary-General also said that the responsibility for the implementation of the Minsk agreements lies on Russia.
We stressed that the increase in ceasefire violations in eastern Ukraine in recent days is deeply disturbing, as are the recent incidents targeting OSCE monitors. All 29 members of the NATO-Russia Council agreed today on the need for a full and rapid implementation of the Minsk agreements. NATO and Russia have profound and persistent disagreements. Today's meeting did not change that. NATO allies remain firm that there can be no return to practical cooperation until Russia returns to the respect of international law.
And now we would like to present the latest events that took place around the globe for the current week.
Earthquake in Ecuador. More than 500 people died, more than 20,000 of citizens left without their houses. Majority of them are forced to live in tents. Near 10,000 of military men and more than 3,000 policemen are clearing the debris and helping those who suffered from the earthquake in Ecuador. The most difficult situation for citizens of outlying region of the north of the country. There, rescuers reached to the helicopters. The most hit was made by nature in Manaba province. Guayaquil, Puerto Viejo and Manta settlements are in debris. In tourist place Pedernales, 80% of all buildings are destroyed. There was no such earthquake in Ecuador for 40 years. The strength of push is 8 grades. Four boats with migrants overturned in the Mediterranean Sea. More than 500 people died. Rescuers could save only 40 people. Majority of them are from Somalia, Ethiopia and Eritrea. Migrants went from Egypt to Italy. Exactly through the Egypt, thousands of migrants are trying to reach the banks of Europe. Only from the beginning of the year, by this way, more than 100,000 refugees had come to Europe. The lower house of Brazilian parliament has voted for impeachment of President of the state, Dilma Rousseff. Exactly with this, the procedure of impeachment has started. 367 MPs are in favor. It is even more than needed for such important decision. Dilma Rousseff is accused in falsification of economic indexes of the state. Such change of indexes could give her more votes during the next presidential elections. Debates concerning resignation of Brazilian president were continuing for 6 hours. The decision of lower house was met under the walls of the parliament by happy Brazilian people. In several weeks, upper house of parliament will vote for impeachment for president. In case of positive voting, Dilma Rousseff will have to leave her position. Manless aircraft rammed into an airplane which was leading on landing in London airport Heathrow. 132 passengers were on board of the plane and 5 crew members. Pilot has reported about the accident to police. The investigation has been started. Commission which examined the manless aircraft defined that the plane was not damaged and is ready for further flights. This is the first case of struggle between drone and airplane in Great Britain.
She has no passport but is free to cross any border. She served as a mechanic and driver of the military truck. And for the longest periods, she wears the crown of British monarchs. Elizabeth II celebrated her anniversary. The Queen turned 90 years. Watch next how the UK celebrated Queen's birthday. Elizabeth II acceded to the throne in 1952. Being 25 years old, she became the Queen of 7 states: the Great Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan and Ceylon. Among all British monarchs, she has been ruling for the longest time. Elizabeth did not pretend it on the throne. Her uncle had to derive the crown, but he abdicated from the throne. Then father of Elizabeth was crowned. During the World War II, Elizabeth was a driver and mechanic on the front line. She got the lieutenancy. Queen's hobbies are dogs and gardening. In the morning, Prime Minister David Cameron congratulated Elizabeth II. On her birthday, Queen had a public walk by Windsor Park together with her husband Philip. In the evening, in honor of Queen, 1,000 lighthouses will be sparked. Elizabeth II is planning to celebrate her birthday in the family circle. There will be no hilarious celebrations exactly on the day of Queen's birthday. Festivities will happen in June, when Great Britain celebrates the official Monarch's Day. Kyiv Tower appeared near Leoberezhno metro station in Kyiv. Its height is only 5 meters, while the original counts 96 meters. The tower is one of the projects of Kyiv Zelen Bud. In total, in the capital, the 7 most known in the world objects will be driven up. The next will be the Egyptian Sphinx and the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The Elizabeth Tower had already opened. It is a metal construction, around of which the flowers in the colors of British flag will be blossomed out at the end of May. But the clock is already working and shows accurate time, as the organizers it should. In Art Hall, Mistetsky Arsenal has started one of the biggest cultural events. It is a cooperation between different countries, publishers and readers. More details in our story by Kate Gladka and Anna Bilaeva.
6th Book Art Festival Book Arsenal has started in Kyiv. This is the biggest event that unites literature and art. 2 years at run, Book Arsenal was conducted under the sign of war. There was a glut of books, of war topic, politics topic, and this year I noticed the fall of this tendency. We are interested with history mostly. We think about memory, about refugees, about our place in the world. We are concentrated on translations. 60 guests from other countries visited the fair, in particular such popular authors as Edgar Keret, Zygmunt Miloszewski, Tomas Glavinich, Ignacy Karpovich, Vice President of Frankfurt Book Fair, Tobias Voss.
Be here at the Arsenal Book Festival with a collective stand, and you will find it over there. We will have, you can see we have about 350 book titles from Germany. We have a book collection from new literary releases. We have a collection with children books that is also very important. We have a collection about illustrators and the most beautiful books in Germany.
The topic of program for children this year will cover the issue of personality development, respect to others and socialization of children with special needs. Special guest of program for children is worldwide known Sweden author Ulf Stark, who will present Ukrainian translation of his books. This year the program of festival is greatly extended and has a special block, Crimea, dedicated to life of Crimean Tatars, their history and everyday life. Also, there are some experimental projects, such as Archives by Andruchovich, where a Ukrainian writer played the new roles for him as mediator. In Book Arsenal, there are more than 400 novelties, a lot of publishers and international partners. It is a place of communication between readers and publishers. It is necessary that there was more art and culture, where people can stop, have a comparison which that happens in other countries, do not feel lonely. We want as European community show absolute support and our friendly shoulder. I believe that the Book Arsenal for the few years has become the main book fair in Ukraine, superseding a bit of Publishers Forum, although I really respect the latter. This platform is very modern. It's set up by the European fashion. It reminds me of a Paris book salon, so I expect this event every year. Come and live here 5 days. We take part in Arsenal for 2 years in a row. Also this year we are as co-organizers, a ride with my daughter Marusia, not only to see but also to buy something for children. We have already bought ABC book. I think for Ukraine it is a very powerful event, and every year it becomes more cooler. As an artist, I'm glad at visual approach of the organizers towards the event. The book arsenal will last until 24th of April.
It was weekly newscast by First Ukraine. Olga Tkachenko was working for you in the studio. Thank you for watching First Ukraine. Goodbye.